Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session on Rumination News Network. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And the title of our story this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, breaking news from the Caribbean in terms of Trinidad and Tobago on war alert. U.S. moves against Venezuela. Kamla appeals for calm. So Kamla Persad-Bissessar is appealing for calm as her nation state is anxious because yesterday there were rumors that the United States was going to strike Venezuela. And that story was first carried by the Miami Herald. And Trump and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, went on their social media website to declare that that was fake news. Now, Kamala Persad-Bissessar is also appealing to her citizens that they should exercise calm and not be anxious because as she has everything under control, even though there are lots of questions being asked in terms of why the Trinidad Army were called in for effort to be on alert and for special exercise, and they could see lots of military personnel entering the Red House there in Trinidad. So people are asking lots of questions which can't be answered. You know, when questions also were posed to Jeremy, he also was very, very, dismissive of people's concerns. So we are living in a society in which our prime ministers or government expects that we will trust everything that they do, and they must not act transparently to divulge important news items to us. So that is what is happening there in Trinidad and Tobago now. They are under war alert, and they are not sure when the first strike will be made. Tensions are rising fast as Trinidad and Tobago is reportedly on war alert amid growing U.S. military pressure against Venezuela. Opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar has urged calm and unity even as regional fears of conflict grow. Right? Now, how can you be calm in a storm? Well, you can be calm in a storm if you are told the truth and therefore you have your arms, all of your, war supplies ready to deal with the war. Right? Very important, right? Shouldn't we understand that now that if we are told the truth, then citizens are going to be able to deal better with the news, right? But if they're not told what is happening, then they are going to be they're going to be concerned. They're going to be anxious. And yesterday, many people were actually going to supermarket to prep up, right? Their understanding because they needed food and some supplies in the case war was broken out, right? In case of war. But the fact of the matter is that the United States is denying that it is at war or it is going to war with Venezuela and has been denying that particular point. Okay. Now, in the Miami Herald, it carried a story yesterday titled Trump's Caribbean Military Buildup, a War on Drugs. And it's not allowing me in. Yeah, it seems like it's not allowing me to get the article. War on Drugs or Regime Change Campaign. Now, that is what the story carried yesterday that was written, well, today. Well, today is the first, so it was written yesterday. And it says that warships are cruising the Caribbean. U.S. missiles are obliterating motorboats into oceans, and bombers are buzzing Venezuela, where sources say the Trump administration has identified targets on land for future strikes. Too much of the world, it all looks like a push for regime change in Venezuela, where the United States has offered a $50 million reward for the capture of authoritarian ruler Nicolas Maduro. But according to President Donald Trump, the purpose for the military escalation is closer to home. Each missile strike prevents deadly drugs from reaching U.S. shores, and each drug toting vessel struck saves 25,000 U.S. lives, he says. Now, how does that save U.S. lives when we understand that the fentanyl is what is responsible for the 25,000 deaths of which he's speaking? Okay, so how does the war with Venezuela or on Venezuela, how will that reduce that murder when fentanyl, and fentanyl is not produced by Venezuela, is not trafficked through Venezuela, it's trafficked through Mexico, produced in China. Okay, so if other words, probably he should go to war with China. I'm not suggesting that he does, but that is the logical thing to have done, and not Venezuela. It's not logical what they're doing. So obviously it's regime change that Trump is actually after. Okay, he's shooting for regime change. Now, listen to what the Miami Herald continues to say. Despite historical evidence that narcotics trafficked through Venezuela aren't likely bound for the United States, Trump is casting the military campaign as a literal war on drugs, perhaps making the idea of intervention more palpable to the country, particularly the isolationist supporters who helped return him to the White House. And yesterday I had an interview done with Professor Gertov, Mel Gertov, and he is a professor emeritus in the United States from Oregon. And, we were discussing the whole matter of the fact that this whole war on drugs is built on the end game is regime change. Okay, so I will post that as soon as I can, perhaps on Sunday, if not Sunday, Monday, I'll post that interview with Professor Mel Gertov. Okay. Now, this is a base that's pretty skeptical of U.S. entanglements, and Will Freeman, a fellow for Latin American Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, I don't think they'd be more in favor of it in Latin America than other parts of the world. But as long as it is presented and as maybe motivated by concern with U.S. drug deaths and what his supporters view as dangerous forms of illegal immigration, then it's maybe more justifiable. Okay, so his base are concerned about illegal immigration and the inflow of drugs. But these two also can be concerned. It can be controlled. These two problems can be controlled, can be remedied if the White House desires to do so. First of all, the White House has been meddling. The U.S. has been meddling in lots of countries' affairs, and when the United States goes to country, it destabilizes the country, and people begin to move, and they often move to the north. So if the United States stops meddling in people's political affairs, then you'll have fewer people migrating to the north. So that's solved. The problem of drugs, too. The United States also has the highest demand for drugs. The citizens are just, drug addicts, have a high demand for drugs. Okay? Now you're really wondering, what is that great about America then if most of its citizens are on drugs? What is so great about that country? Right? It's a sick country. Sick mentally, psychologically, physically. Okay? So there's a war on American citizens. And is the US state complicit in that warfare against its own citizens? And these are questions that we have to ask ourselves. Make sure you're liking and you are sharing the videos to beat the algorithm. The White House is also declared, Venezuela-based Tren de Aragua and other drug gangs as foreign terrorist organizations, which the administration argues gives them justification to act unilaterally and without congressional approval. And this is what came out of the war on terror. When they are using these things, once the president suggests that it has something to do with national security, then he can declare war without congressional approval, the approval of Congress. Okay? But yet the president is denying that there is war. Okay? The paper here, the Miami Herald, continues to say the opioid epidemic remains a major problem in America, particularly deaths from fentanyl. About 100,000 people die from drug overdoses every year, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Provisional data released in May by the CDC found that overdoses dropped last year to about 80,000, with fentanyl responsible for 48,000 fatalities. So there is absolutely problematic. There is a problem where drugs are concerned in the United States, but Venezuela is not the major port of drugs into the United States. So why is the United States so much, paranoid about Venezuela? And just by removing one president from office, do you think the problem is going to be solved? I don't think so. Even if the incoming one had good intentions, the problem would not be solved. The root causes need to be explored. And then we can begin at least the first step at solving the drug problem. Okay? So Trinidad and Tobago are now caught up in the crosshairs, they're in the crossfire, and they will have to deal with all of the effects of war. And I can tell you, when the war drums are being drummed, they're not going to tell you that it is so. It's going to happen overnight, and you are going to be caught off guard. And that is why you have to be constantly on the alert. You have to be constantly on the alert. And right now, as far as we're seeing in Trinidad and Tobago, the government is lying blatantly and is not telling its citizens really what is happening. They are totally in the dark, but so are US citizens. They haven't got a clue for a long time what is happening. They're just there, hoping for the best and thinking that they're living in a normal society when the society is abnormal because it's a militarized empire. The United States is a militarized empire. It's not about dialogue. It's not about diplomacy. It's not about transparency, right? And Kamla is now being transferred to the Caribbean, where our governments are going to tell us that in the interest of national security, they can't divulge things that they should divulge because they're public servants. And we ought to know, the citizens ought to know what is happening, irrespective of what government they are working with, because this is about life and death. And wars often provoke death, induce death. Okay, that is what we need to understand. Okay, so this is the story I wanted to share with you. What do you think? And let me know from Trinidad and Tobago, what is happening there? How do you feel? What steps are you taking to ensure that you are safe? Make sure that you trust God, you believe in God, and whatever you think you believe in, spiritual being that you want to believe in. I believe in God. You pray and you exercise faith, because right now there's nothing else to do. There's nothing we can do, and you can't express calm. You can't exercise calm in the government. The government is lying, and they are obfuscating everything, every question they're asked. They're trying to behave as if, why are you asking me that question? So what's the purpose of journalism? Right? The purpose of journalism and journalists is to ask questions to get answers for the citizens. And we can close on journalism school if our leaders are not willing to answer questions. And I find that based on what I'm seeing in Trinidad now, they're very arrogant. Those ministers in government, how do they even remain in power, being that arrogant, in which you can't answer a simple question? They're attacking you, right? They are there to answer questions and to alleviate the anxiety, to assuage the anxiety of the people. But that's not what they're there for. They're there because they are a part of a global monarchy. That is what they are, really, a monarchy in which they don't have to answer any questions, and we are plebs. The citizens are plebs. They're Goya. Okay? That is what it's all about. Thank you so much for joining. Remember now to like and to share and to subscribe to the channel. Very important that you do that. Do you want the news every day? I've been asking you, do you want me to publish the news every day at 2? If not, give me a time that you think is more convenient for most of you so that I can publish the news at that time. But I can't confuse the algorithm. The algorithm is a very sensitive machine, right? And there's no logic to how it behaves. So I really want you to know that many of you are on top of the videos, you are watching them throughout, you are liking them. very important that you do that. If not, the channel is going to have to just be defunct, because it won't be, I can't survive if you don't watch the videos. YouTube is going to bury them all. It's not because I'm asking you to like and I'm begging you to like. It's because that's the only way the videos are going to be shared. If they're not shared on the platform, the YouTube algorithm buries them. So people can't see them. It won't go into people's feed. I want you to understand that this is not a democratic process. We are living in an authoritarian society. So even though one is saying the other is authoritarian, most governments living in the West and other parts of the world are at the moment. Thank you so much for joining.